Do not underestimate a bright person who shows up every day without the best resources and their ability to create something that is world changing. Keeping the same level of curiosity and inquisitiveness and maybe naivete that you can do anything you want. That, to me, I want to make sure that this world does not beat that out of me and beat that out of other entrepreneurs, because it can happen, man.
Top leaders, meaningful conversation, actionable advice, bulldoze complacency, ignite inspiration, create impact. Produced by Southwestern family of companies. This is the Action Catalyst.
Are you interested in advertising with the Action Catalyst? Our listeners could be hearing about your brand right here, right now. For details, shoot us an email at info@theactioncatalyst.com.
In this episode, we continue our conversation with Bob Bush, a senior investment executive and the president, CEO, and co-founder of Matumbo Coffee, as well as a longtime advisor to the European Commission, royal families, and Dubai Prime Minister, and a contributing writer to Forbes Middle East.
I'm enjoying this, so until you kick me off, I'm good to go.
All right, awesome. I know you are a contributor to Forbes Middle East, and Jeff Bezos said, and I'm heavily paraphrasing, that he mentioned how the U.S. is such a good fertile ground for business, partly because of the risk tolerance of the money in the U.S. That there are many organizations that have a high risk attitude towards venture and taking bets that isn't as common in other countries. But I think you have an interesting perspective, because I'd be curious your thoughts about the risk tolerance in the Middle East for investments. From an uninformed perspective over here, it seems that it's quite high, but you might have a different perspective on that. So, and I think even your greater comment on the economics of risk in general would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Mr. Bezos's comments. There are a couple of things there. I think venture capital and PE do not have a high risk tolerance. And it seems that I'm going against one of the world's richest men when I say this. So let me really sort of unpack that.
Yeah.
What you find when you talk to sophisticated investors, it's all about the risk mitigation. These guys don't make money by taking non-risk adjusted risk. It is all about a risk adjusted risk. And so because of the size of the capital pool, you have different types of risk players who are comfortable with certain kinds of risks for startups, or certain kinds of risks for growth companies, or certain kinds of risks, right? And so one of the things that, and I'm sure that Bezos would agree, that when you look at a capital stack, you will find that there's ample capital for whatever risk level that you want, sufficient enough to have a very robust market around it. So it's not so much that the U.S. has a super high risk tolerance, but that there are enough players, wherever you want to be on the risk spectrum, who are comfortable with understanding that particular risk at that development and the mitigants for that risk. And that's who they bet on. They don't bet on the guy who's taking the most risk, or, the company or the team or the woman who's taking the most risk. They're betting on the company, the woman, the team that knows how to mitigate the most risk for that type of risk. That's the bet.
And I think you're probably dead on that Bezos would agree on that. I think he probably operates with a different definition of risk than the average person, and probably lines up with what you just described.
Right. So let's dig that a little bit deeper. What we have, this kind of links to the Middle East, it links to Europe, where I've been fortunate to have done some work with the European Commission and other capital providers across the world. And so one of the things that the United States has is reasonably patient capital. Very little capital is patient, and certainly not PE and hedge fund capital, but it's reasonably patient, meaning that it can be sticky. That if, depending on where you are in that capital structure, if you need 3 years of capital, or if you need 5 years of capital, or you need 7 years of capital, or you need 10 years of capital, right? There are capital providers that are willing to take that turn, provided that the mitigants are there. And that, I had the pleasure, I was asked to advise a particular group, several groups of the European Commission around this very point. I don't know if you just saw recently where the Commission has now allocated $200 billion for AI development. And it was almost 100x than what they had internally thought they were going to put into AI just a year ago. And so I've lived in Germany. I've spent a lot of time in Switzerland and Austria and talking to Europeans where these sources of capital are, spend a lot of time in London as well. One of the distinctions between sort of European risk-taking and the U.S. is, and I'll take it from the entrepreneurial side. So the European Commission asked me to go around Eastern Europe to the Balkans and all these Eastern European countries, including Ukraine, and meet with entrepreneurs and accelerators and incubators. So this was, this may have been about 10 years ago, on this very question of, appetite for risk, et cetera. So from the European Commission perspective, they had the Chinese and the Asians, tons of capital, very assertive, very aggressive to their east. And then they had the Americans, very innovative, very assertive, very aggressive. And the Europeans were getting bookended and squeezed. And so having been an American that had lived in the Middle East, who was now living in Europe, I was living in Europe because my former wife is European, German. And so we started a family there. And you're at a dinner party here and there, and people start asking you questions. And before you know it, they're saying, can you come to Brussels? So I ended up doing some work in Brussels. So the point is that the entrepreneurs, the best, most innovative talent that's coming out of these countries is, I would say, superior to the talent coming out of U.S. universities.
Wow.
But the incentives, so think about it this way. Mm-hmm. I had the pleasure of getting a philosophy degree at a liberal arts school. You don't have that kind of luxury in many of these Eastern Europe. It is physics, it's math, it's engineering. You make stuff.
Yeah, you make stuff.
Right?
Yeah,
right? And so the pragmatic and practical pool of talent at that university, at that mindset level, they make great stuff. And guess where the best and the brightest go? Up until recently, they become PhD students. And when you talk to them as PhD students, and then you talk to them, I spoke at dozens of universities and talked to professors and departments, those departments and professors eschew their best and brightest doing something as pedantic as making money.
Yeah. Interesting.
So there's this stigma that if you're that smart, why would you want to do what those 120 IQs guys do in London? So you got culturally this issue of not supporting innovation in that sense. So you got a lot of best people not being trained in how to truly be innovative. They can be inventive. They can make, Tesla's a wonderful example that's exceptionally inventive, but he got outmaneuvered by Edison and others around how to make the business model and being truly innovative around those inventions. That's a historical, culturally relevant point even today. His level of inventiveness is top notch, but his ability to meld the capital, get the business model around it, he got outmaneuvered. He got outgunned by Edison and co. Right? And so when you're really thinking about the fertile ground for risk or fertile ground for talent or matching capital to talent, et cetera, there's some really interesting things that I've personally had to observe going from just on the talent side, exceptionally talented kids. And so what ended up happening is how they started bridging and learning from the Americans. Then you had a lot of, and Ukraine was a perfect example of this. They started doing IT outsourcing to some of these countries because these kids could code and they had good math skills and they had good engineering skills, et cetera. So that's transition. And now they realize, well, wait a minute, why am I doing the code for that Silicon Valley company? I want to be that Silicon Valley entrepreneur. So organically, there's sort of this shift around all of that. So do not underestimate a bright person who shows up every day without the best resources and their ability to create something that is world changing.
That's right. Well said. Question I ask everyone, but one that I just love in general is you've had a wealth of experience. Let's say you were able to just sit on that bus from Illinois to St. Louis and talk to that young man who's riding to school every day, what advice would you provide him, knowing all the things that you know now?
Well, as you've already picked up on, and I'm not trying to be unorthodox, I think the young man has something to tell me, less than me telling him. And I'm going to tell you why. Because as you start having the weight of the world on your shoulders, you got kids, you got wives, you've got employees, you've got bigger problems, right? You think keeping the same level of curiosity and inquisitiveness and maybe naivete that you can do anything you want. That, to me, I want to make sure that this world does not beat that out of me and beat that out of other entrepreneurs, because it can happen, man. You know, I remember reading very early on about an immigrant that came out of Europe during the 30s in New York in the middle of the Depression. And 50 years later, he was this super rich industrialist. And they asked him, how did you do it? He said that I never read the papers, right? So what I would say to anyone that asks this question is those aspirations that we all have, that sense of wonder, etc., don't lose that. Keep that young man or that young woman in your spirit, because before you know it, the world will do its best to take it out of you. So I think that young man has a lot more to teach me than I probably do him. That's a real value to me. Of course, I got more skills and I got more people, etc. But the heart of that matter, that talent, that God-given hunger, that God-given inquisitiveness, don't want to lose that, because that's your spark.
Yeah, the A+ player is the person that's humble, hungry, and smart. And you could replace hungry with curious, right? But the more of these interviews that I've done, I couldn't agree more, right? The humility and the hunger is a good combination with intelligence. And the more I've learned about business, the more I realize I don't know. So it's pretty easy to remain humble in this business when you're learning all the time.
None of us are smarter than the market, brother.
That's right. That's right. For our listeners, please share Mutombo Coffee, which I know we didn't spend probably nearly as much time on this as we could have, because you have such an interesting and colorful life. But where can people learn about the Mutombo Coffee, the respective social initiatives, and how can they participate?
Mutombocoffee.com, of course. We have a website, MUTOMBO, coffee.com. We also have launched an Amazon store, and so that we'll start doing more with that. Primarily, we've been B2B for the last few years. So we're now just starting to, which is why I'm sticking my head up and doing more podcasts like yours, because we want people to know that we exist, etc. One of the other things we will do for your listeners is we'll create a VIP code for them. And anyone that puts in their code when they go to the website, they will get a VIP preferential pricing for our product as a way for us to say thank you for introducing us to your listeners.
Yeah, love that. Well, thank you. Wow, it was great, really great interview. I mean, really good for our listeners. Hopefully you've enjoyed it too. But great conversation.
I did. Make me look good, fellas. Make me look good.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast, and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.
This is your host, Adam Outland. And outside of this podcast, I'm also the leader for a division of our company, Southwestern Consulting, and our division is the Southwestern Student Coaching Program. And that division we started back in 2020 because the desire we had was to take all these skills that we've equipped executives with. For over a decade, I've coached executives and managers and sales professionals on the skills, the habits, the motivation, and the systems to be successful in their job and in life. And what we realized from working with 30, 40, 50-year-olds was if we could have gotten to them when they were in ninth grade, in middle school, in high school, and equipped them with the same things we're teaching them now, the ripple effects would be huge. And so back in 2020, we decided to formulate a coaching program for youth, equipping youth with the same types of skill development that we typically work on with adults. We just apply it to their world. And what that looks like is teaching them the study skills, the communication skills that they can use every day in the classroom and outside the classroom, coaching them on the mindset and the motivation of someone who's a top performer. And what does that mean? It means helping a young teenager create and craft a vision for themselves. Because without a vision, we perish, but with a vision, we can be equipped with the motivation to dig into our study habits. We can see the connection between our future and the excellence that we have to form on our habits now to be successful in the long run. And we also work on the emotional intelligence. It's how we balance our emotions and manage those emotions when they come up in a way that allows us to communicate effectively with others and to communicate with ourselves. It's about equipping young people with self-talk. That means equipping them with the language that they can use to better direct their thoughts and their mind to accomplish their goals and their aims. And lastly, we equip them with the systems. That means for us, the tools, the time management, and the organization strategies to not just work hard in life, but to work smart. And when we combine all these different areas that we work with our teens on, what we find is that they form the habits early in life that allows them to achieve their goals later in life and even right now. And so our passion is to equip as many young people across this world as we can. And we're doing pretty good so far. We've got teens in 7 different countries who've been through our coaching program to date. We've worked with over 400 teens, and we would love to be able to serve you as well. Here's how it works. If you want to investigate coaching, we start with a parent consultation. That's a free call to discuss your student's particular needs and our program details. We work with Olympic athletes all the way down to teens that are just struggling to motivate themselves to do the daily work necessary in their class. So wherever your teen is, we'll meet them where they are and get them to the next level. And that starts with a parent consultation with you. A student planning session, that's the next step. If we agree that the value that coaching can bring matches your teen, then we will move to a student planning session. It's basically a free one-on-one coaching session with your teen. And that is designed to support them, but it's also designed to ask a lot of questions to help explore whether or not they want to be coached. Because at the end of the day, they ultimately have to be the one that pulls the trigger. And then after your student planning session, we get them paired with the right coach for them. We have an amazing staff of coaches from ex-Division I athletes, people who've come from the Ivy League system. We have coaches who have come from entrepreneurial backgrounds and acting backgrounds, so we can pair them with the right fit for them. And then once they partner with their coach, they'll benefit from 2 coaching sessions a month to really zone in on their personal growth and their skill development. So if you're ready to give your student the tools they need to be successful, click the link in the show notes for more information and to make sure you can schedule your free parent consultation today.